In the endless dark space, a single alien warship drifted alone, its metal body scarred by recent battles, and its systems broken beyond what the crew could handle. The once proud vessel now floated powerless, with engines offline and life support failing, while the crew worked in panic to keep themselves alive. The captain of the ship, named Delos, stood at the center of the command deck, his tall frame bent with worry, his scales a pale shade from exhaustion and fear, his eyes glowing faint blue as he stared at the dark screen before him. He knew that without help the crew would not last much longer. The crew rushed from one station to another, trying to repair broken wires and restart the reactors, but nothing worked. Every spark that flew from damaged panels reminded them of their weakness. Every flicker of failing light reminded them of the end coming closer. Delos raised his claw and called for silence. He told them that they would send out a distress call to any nearby ship, even though he doubted anyone would answer. The signal was broadcast across the sector, a desperate cry for help from a dying vessel that once carried the pride of its people. Many of the younger crew whispered among themselves. Some said they hoped their own fleets would arrive soon. Others whispered that perhaps enemy raiders would hear the signal and destroy them faster. Delos listened in silence, his heart heavy. He knew that in their current state, they could do nothing but wait and hope. Then one of the officers shouted they had received a reply, but the message was not from their allies. Instead, it came from a human frontier outpost. The mention of humans spread unease across the deck. Most of the crew looked confused, some looked disgusted, and a few even laughed bitterly. Humans were young. Compared to them, a new species that only recently reached the stars. Their technology was said to be crude, their fleets small, their reputation weak. Delos narrowed his eyes and asked the message to be played. A calm voice spoke from the communicator, introducing itself as a repair crew from a human frontier station. The voice explained that they had received a distress call and were on the way to assist the alien ship. Delos felt torn. He did not trust these humans, but he also knew his ship could not survive much longer. Fuel was nearly gone, oxygen was running low, and systems continued to fail. He finally agreed and signaled them back, telling them to hurry. Hours passed slowly, like years for the alien crew. Every minute the air grew thinner. Every sound of failing machines reminded them of their doom. Then finally sensors picked up a small vessel approaching. Compared to a massive alien warship, the human ship looked tiny, almost fragile, like a toy. Yet it came forward, without fear, moving with confidence through the darkness. The alien crew gathered at the viewing port, watching the human ship draw closer its surface plane. And simple, no shining armor, no grand weapons, just a compact vessel designed for work rather than battle. They whispered that this was hopeless. What could such a ship possibly do to help them? Some said the humans might be here to salvage the wreck rather than repair it. Others said maybe the humans were fools who did not know what they were walking into. Delos remained silent, but deep inside his doubt grew. When the human ship docked at the alien warship, the airlock opened with a hiss. The aliens tensed, ready to face strangers they did not trust. Then the humans stepped through the door. To the astonishment of the aliens, they did not look nervous or afraid. They carried strange tools slung across their backs. They wore plain suits smudged with oil and metal dust. And most shocking of all, they carried small cups in their hands, sipping from them casually. The lead human was a tall man with a calm face, his eyes sharp yet relaxed. He greeted the alien captain with a nod and a small smile, saying they'd come to help. Delos could hardly believe the casual tone of his voice. The man spoke as if repairing a massive warship drifting in space was nothing unusual. The alien crew exchanged worried glances, whispering that these humans did not take the situation seriously. The humans looked around the alien ship, examining broken panels, shattered conduits, and burned reactors. Instead of panicking, they walked slowly, touching the walls. As if studying the structure, one of them even whistled softly, as though amused by the challenge. Delos finally demanded to know if they could fix the ship. The lead human nodded calmly and said they would do more than just fix it. The alien crew grew restless at those words. They had asked only for repairs. They did not want experiments or risks, but the humans ignored the nervous stares and began unloading their tools, boxes of equipment, wires glowing with faint energy, and strange devices the aliens had never seen before. Soon sparks lit up the corridors as the humans worked cutting away old parts and replacing them with their own designs. The aliens asked what they were doing, and one human simply smiled, saying they were giving the ship a new life. Meanwhile, the humans set up a small corner for themselves, brewing a hot, dark drink in small metal containers. They offered the steaming liquid to the aliens, who hesitated, suspicious of anything unknown. But one young crew member finally tried it and gasped at the strange, bitter taste. Soon others followed, and soon the command deck smelled of roasted beans as the aliens sipped carefully, unsure whether to hate or love the drink. Time moved forward as the humans worked tirelessly. They crawled through engine chambers, rewired power systems, and welded new frames. They did not sleep. They did not complain. They worked while sipping their strange drink, and even laughing among themselves. Their calm attitude baffled the aliens, who grew both irritated and curious. How could these humans remain so casual while their ship balanced between life and death? Finally, after hours of silence and sparks, the human leader walked to the alien captain and told him to prepare the crew. The ship was about to change. The Los frowned, wondering what the human meant. But before he could ask, the lights across the deck flickered, then blazed brightly. For the first time in days, the entire warship hummed with new energy, stronger than before. The aliens gasped as the sensors showed power levels far beyond the original design. The crew shouted in disbelief, demanding answers. How could repairs create more power than the ship was built for? The human only smiled and said it was not just repaired with an upgrade. Delos felt his breath catch as he looked at the readings: engines restored, shields glowing stronger, reactors pulsing with life. Yet the human spoke as if this was only the beginning. The aliens stood frozen in awe and confusion. Some cheered, some trembled. Delos himself could not decide whether to thank the humans or fear them as he stared at the calm figures who worked like simple laborers, yet wielded the power to change a warship so easily. He realized that whatever had just begun, it was far greater than a repair. And in the silence that followed, the human engineer lifted his cup of steaming drink, took a slow sip, and whispered with a grin to his crew, "This is going to be fun." The alien warship, once drifting helpless in the void, now thrummed with renewed strength, its broken engines glowing with strange blue light, and its power core pulsing stronger than ever before. The crew stared in disbelief at the panels flashing brighter than they had ever seen, even before the damage their ship had suffered. Captain Delos walked across the deck, his clawed hands trembling. As he studied the readings, the numbers rose higher than the limits of their original design, and his mind struggled to accept that humans had done this in only a few short hours. The human leader stood calmly near the reactor chamber, his crew surrounding him with tools glowing faintly. As if alive, one of the younger alien officers approached, demanding to know what exactly they had done. The human smiled gently and replied that they had not only fixed broken parts, but replaced them with human innovations. The words confused the aliens further, for they had expected crude repairs, not complete transformation. Whispers spread across the deck. Some of the crew feared the humans had tampered with forbidden technology. Others believed this was some hidden trick, perhaps a trap. Yet when they looked at the calm figures of the humans, sipping their strange bitter drink and chatting as though they were fixing a toy, the fear inside them mixed with reluctant curiosity. Delos gathered his officers around the main console and lowered his voice. He asked if they trusted the humans, to which most shook their heads. But one young officer argued that without the humans, there would already be dead, floating corpses in the void. Delos admitted the truth of those words, yet still his chest tightened with suspicion. He finally decided to test what the humans had done. He ordered a controlled ignition of the engines, a small burst, to see if the ship could truly move again. The humans nodded without hesitation, telling the aliens not to worry. The command deck grew silent as the order was carried out, every crew member gripping their stations, expecting either success or a violent explosion. But instead, the ship responded with perfect balance. It moved through the void smoother than it ever had before, gliding like a shadow across the stars. The aliens gasped in awe, unable to contain their shock. Some even cheered, tears in their eyes. Delos stared at the humans and demanded how such small modifications could bring such impossible results. The human leader shrugged, saying human engineers enjoyed solving problems in creative ways, and that sometimes the best fix was not to restore the old design, but to make it better. Those simple words struck the aliens deep, for in their culture, technology was sacred and never be changed, only maintained. Yet here were humans treating it like clay to be reshaped freely. As the hours passed, more wonders appeared. The humans repaired weapons bays that had been useless for months, yet when the aliens tested them, the firepower was far stronger than before. Plasma beams shot farther, and faster shields held against simulated strikes with power that should have shattered them in seconds. Each new upgrade left the aliens stunned, until finally the ship felt almost unrecognizable, no longer the broken vessel that had cried for help, but something new, something stronger. The crew began to whisper a dangerous thought among themselves, that perhaps the humans were not weaklings, as they once believed. Perhaps their crude appearance was a mask hiding knowledge and skill far beyond what stories had ever claimed. Delos heard the whispers, and though he tried to quiet them, he could not stop his own mind from wandering toward the same thought. During the rest cycle, Delos found himself alone in the observation chamber, watching stars drift by. He heard footsteps and turned to see the human leader approach, holding 2 cups of the dark drink. He offered one to Delos, who hesitated, then slowly accepted, taking a cautious sip. The taste burned bitter, and strange yet warmth spread through him somehow. Comforting the human leaned on a railing beside him and spoke casually, saying that humans had learned to adapt quickly because survival demanded it, that every challenge was simply another puzzle waiting to be solved. Delos studied the man, his sharp eyes calm yet carrying weight, as if he had seen many battles. He asked why humans would help strangers without reward or alliance. The human smiled faintly and said, because someone had to, and because one day perhaps the aliens might do the same for them. Delos felt silence press heavy between them, his distrust softening slightly, though not vanishing completely. The next day brought another surprise. The humans gathered the alien engineers and invited them to watch their work closely. At first, the aliens hesitated, fearing contamination or insult to their traditions, yet the humans insisted, showing them step by step how they bent metal, how they fused circuits, and how they merged different energy flows. Without fear of breaking rules, the alien engineers soon leaned closer, curiosity overpowering. Fear, their eyes wide with excitement as they realized possibilities they had never imagined. For the first time, the aliens saw that the humans were not careless but fearless. Where they themselves bowed to old restrictions, the humans tested boundaries. Where the aliens feared mistakes, the humans treated mistakes as lessons. Where the aliens saw only survival, the humans saw progress. And slowly the wall of suspicion began to crack. Yet not all aboard welcomed the change. One officer named Serac muttered constantly about human arrogance, warning the crew that this gift was dangerous. He claimed the upgrades could be traps, hidden codes that would betray them when least expected. His words sowed seeds of doubt again, until tension spread across the deck. Delos confronted Serac, telling him to hold his tongue. But deep inside, Delos knew the fear was not entirely without reason. As if fate had heard their doubt, sensors suddenly flared, warning of approaching ships, unidentified signatures closing fast. The crew panicked, rushing to stations. For the first time since their ship had been broken, they felt both hope and terror, for now they had strength, but also uncertainty. The humans, however, looked unconcerned, as if they had been waiting for such a moment. The leader calmly told Delos that it was time to test the upgrades in real combat. The alien crew stared wide-eyed, unable to believe the confidence in his voice. While alarms echoed across the halls, the human engineers began preparing the systems as if it were part of their plan. Delos ordered battle stations, his voice firm, though his heart pounded inside. He knew this would decide everything, whether the humans had truly saved them or had only led them to a faster death. The approaching ships grew clearer on the scanners, hostile vessels armed and ready, moving like predators toward prey. The crew whispered that their broken warship would have stood no chance before, yet now, with the humans' touch, they might stand stronger than ever. Delos felt every eye on him, waiting for his command, waiting to see if he trusted the strange allies who had turned their wreck into something greater. As the enemy ships closed, an alien captain clenched his claws and gave the order to engage. The ship roared with new life, engines burning, shields blazing, weapons charging brighter than ever. The entire crew gasped at the surge of power, and for the first time in days, hope surged through their hearts. And as the first enemy volley lit the void, the human leader simply raised his cup, took another sip of his strange drink, and whispered that the real fun was only beginning. The alien warship, now alive with power, faced a growing swarm of enemy ships that closed, and across the dark void the crew braced themselves at their stations, their hearts racing as lights flickered across the control panels. An alarm sang warning tones. Captain Delos stood tall, though inside his chest fear hammered like a drum, his eyes fixed on the human leader, who appeared far too calm, sipping his dark drink, as if battle was nothing more than a passing storm. The enemy fleet outnumbered them 10-1, and every alien officer knew that in the past such odds would mean certain destruction. Yet something deep inside whispered that perhaps this time might be different. The first enemy volley struck with blazing fury, energy beams tearing to the void like rivers of fire. Yet instead of ripping through shields as expected, the alien ship shimmered with renewed strength. The shields bent, but did not break, glowing bright, and holding strong gasps rose from crew as they realized the human upgrades were working beyond belief. The human leader nodded, as though he had already known this would happen, and calmly gestured for the aliens to return fire. Weapons charged with a hum that shook the deck. The alien gunners stared at their consoles, wide-eyed, for the readings showed power levels never before reached in the history of their vessel. When the captain gave the order to fire, the cannons erupted in radiant bursts, tearing to the void with blazing arcs of energy that struck the nearest enemy ship. A single shot cut across its hull, splitting the metal like thin paper, and in moments the enemy vessel exploded in silence, swallowed by the stars. The crew erupted in cries of shock, and all their voices trembling as they witnessed what they thought impossible. Enemy ships swarmed close to their formation, tightening as they unleashed another furious storm. Yet once again, the upgraded shields held true to humans moved quickly across the deck, guiding alien engineers to reroute power channels and balance flows. Every command they gave seemed casual yet precise. And soon the alien officers found themselves obeying without question, their fear turning into trust. Each adjustment made the ship stronger, faster, and more lethal. As the battle raged, Delos felt a strange spark rise inside him, something that had been absent for many cycles. He felt not only hope, but pride. His ship, once broken and dying, now roared with fury under his command. And though humans had changed it, he stood at the helm, directing its wrath. He shouted orders, his voice echoing through the chamber, and his crew responded with renewed spirit, their claws moving swiftly across panels, their eyes sharp with focus. They no longer looked like a desperate band awaiting doom, but a true fighting force ready to strike. Another enemy ship fell, then another. The aliens cheered, their voices echoing like thunder through the halls. The humans exchanged quick smiles, but never lost focus, their hands guiding systems like seasoned masters. Delos watched the human leader, who calmly spoke of energy cycles and firing angles, things his own engineers had never even considered. He realized that the humans were not improvising, but planning with knowledge deeper than he could measure. Yet even as they fought, victory was not assured, for more enemy ships poured from the darkness, their weapons flashing brighter, their tactics shifting to flank the alien warships. Serac, the officer who had always distrusted the humans, shouted that they were being lured into a trap. He demanded retreat, warning that the upgrades could not save them. Forever the low silence with a growl, but in his own heart he felt the weight of the truth. The enemy was vast and relentless, and sooner or later even this newfound strength could be tested to breaking. The human leader stepped forward, his calm gaze meeting Delos's voice steady, as he explained that retreat would only invite the enemy to follow, and that the only path was to push through with force. Delos hesitated, his mind torn between fear and the strange confidence the human inspired. The crew waited breathless for his decision. The stars outside burned with the light of weapons. Fire the ship shook under the strain of battle. Yet in that moment, Delos lifted his claws and gave the order to advance. The warship surged forward, engines roaring with a deep hum that sent shivers across the deck. Its speed doubled, tripled, until it darted to the enemy formation like a spear of fire, weapons blazing left and right. Enemy vessels burst apart in waves of silent explosions, debris scattering across the void. The aliens shouted in disbelief, their voices rising like a storm. The humans moved swiftly, guiding power to weapons and shields, keeping the flow perfect, as though they had done this 1,000 times before. One enemy ship managed to lock onto their flank, unleashing a barrage that slammed hard into their shields. Sparks flew across the deck, alarms screamed, officers cried out. But before panic could take hold, the humans rushed forward, rerouting circuits and fusing damage lines with tools. Glowing bright energy stabilized the shields, pulsed stronger, and once again they held the crew gasped as they realized the humans had saved them in mere seconds. Delos stood frozen, his eyes wide, his chest pounding, for the truth became impossible to deny. These humans were not just clever repairers. They were warriors hidden behind quiet smiles. They were builders and fighters, both unafraid of danger, unafraid of limits. As he looked upon them, his fear turned into something new, respect mixed with caution and a spark of wonder. The enemy fleet continued to collapse, their formation breaking as ship after ship was reduced to drifting wreckage. The aliens fired relentlessly, their cries filled with fire. The humans nodded in approval, but warned that the battle was not yet won, for sensors now showed a massive signature emerging from the void, larger than any ship they had faced before. The crew fell silent as the shape of a colossal war cruiser appeared, its size dwarfing their vessel, its weapons arrays glowing with dreadful light. The chamber fell into silence, hearts sinking into despair. Serac muttered that this was the end, that no upgrade could save them from such a monster. But before hopelessness could spread, the human leader stepped calmly to the center of the deck, his eyes fixed on the massive enemy ship. He whispered that this was the true test of reason. They had worked so hard, the proof of whether their work had meaning. Delos clenched his claws and nodded, his voice firm as he commanded battle stations once more. The alien warship turned to face the giant, its engines blazing brighter than stars, its weapons humming with power. The crew held their breath as silence hung heavy in the void. Then, with a roar, the first exchange began. Enemy fire thundered against their shields, shaking the hull to its core. But they held. The humans shouted commands. The aliens obeyed. Systems stabilized, weapons surged, and with deafening blasts they fired back, energy beams tearing into the massive cruiser. Sparks scattered across its hull, but endured, returning fire with fury. The battle became a storm of light and shadow, ships twisting through fire beams, blazing shields flaring. The alien crew shouted with every strike Their fear melting into determination, they fought not just for survival, but for pride and for the strange allies who had given them hope. Once more as explosions lit the void brighter than suns, the Los realized that this was no longer about repair or upgrades. It was about something greater. It was about trust forged in fire. The colossal enemy cruiser loomed across the stars, its surface bristling with endless lines of cannons and launchers that glowed with terrifying power. The alien crew inside their warship stared at it with wide eyes, their voices hushed with fear, for they had never seen such a beast before. Its shadow stretched across the void, swallowing the smaller wrecks left drifting from earlier battle. Its engines roared like thunder, though no sound carried in the vacuum of space. Their hearts felt the weight of it pressing heavy like a mountain in the sky. Captain Delos tightened his grip on the command rail, claws digging into the metal. His breath came sharp and fast, but he forced himself to stand tall, for his crew watched it with desperate eyes. He could not show fear. He could not falter. Beside him, the human leader stood calm, his strange drink in hand. As always, his expression unreadable, his eyes steady on the monstrous cruiser, as if he measured it like an opponent in a duel instead of an unstoppable force. The alien ship shuddered as the giant released its first volley. Beams of searing energy struck the shields with blinding light. The deck shook, panels sparked. Officers cried out as sparks rained like burning rain. Yet the shields held stronger than they had any right to hold, glowing bright and humming with power. The human upgrades kept the barrier alive, though it trembled against such weight. The crew gasped in relief and amazement, even as fear still gripped them. Delos barked orders to fire. The upgraded cannons charged with a hum louder than before. Their energy pulsed through the veins of the ship like blood rushing through a beast ready for war. When the cannons erupted, their blast tore across the darkness, smashing into the cruiser's hull. The light was blinding. The impact shook the void, debris scattered. But the giant did not fall. Instead, its armor shimmered and held, cracks forming, but refusing to break. The crew felt despair creep in like a shadow. The humans moved quickly across the deck, their hands guiding alien engineers to reroute power with speed and precision. Each motion made systems run smoother. Each command gave the ship more strength. The aliens obeyed almost without thinking, their fear quieted by the calm authority in human voices. Their claws no longer trembled as they worked alongside human hands. Another volley struck the shields, shaking the hull harder. This time the floor trembled so violently officers nearly fell to their knees. Alarms blared, red light flooded the chamber. Serac shouted above the noise, declaring that they were doomed. His eyes blazing with fear and anger, he demanded retreat once more, insisting no force could match such a titan. Yet Delos ignored him, his eyes locked on the human leader, who had not moved, who simply raised a hand and spoke a single command: hold the line. The alien captain repeated those words with a roar. His crew answered with cries of determination. They steadied themselves at their stations and focused once more. Energy surged, weapons charged, and the warship pressed forward, not in retreat, but in defiance. The battle became a storm of light. Fire beams lanced across the void, tearing at shields, tearing at armor. Each blast lit the darkness brighter. Then stars, explosions, scattered debris like meteors across the endless black. The alien warship weaved and turned, guided by humans who seemed to know the ship better than its own builders. They called for angle shifts. They shouted for weapon cycles. They guided the crew through patterns of attack never before attempted. Every maneuver cut deeper into the cruiser's hide, each strike leaving marks across its once flawless surface. Then came the moment the cruiser revealed its true weapon. From the depths of its hull, a massive cannon, extended, glowing brighter than suns, its size dwarfing any weapon ever seen. It began to charge like gathering at its core, humming louder and louder until the very void seemed to shake with its wrath. The alien crew froze, terror flooding their veins. Even Delos felt his knees weaken, for he knew that no shield, no armor, no upgrade could survive what was coming. The human leader stepped forward at that moment, his voice calm but urgent. He ordered power to be redirected, not to shields, not to weapons, but to engines. Alien officers blinked in confusion. Serac shouted that it was madness, that they would be destroyed without defense. But Delos trusted the calm in human eyes. He gave the order. The engines roared like a beast awakened. The ship surged forward just as the giant cannon unleashed its wrath. A beam of pure destruction tore through the void, where there had been only moments before the light blazed so bright it blinded senses. A shockwave rippled across the void, tearing apart drifting wrecks and scattering them like dust. But the alien warship had already slipped past the deadly line, rushing along the flank of the cruiser, close enough to see the scars along its surface, glowing red from earlier strikes. Now the humans called for focus, all weapons to one single point. 1 week seam they had marked on the cruiser's massive hull. Delos bellowed the order. His crew obeyed. Weapons roared in unity, their energy combining into a storm of fire that crashed into the scarred armor. The hull screamed with cracking light plates, shattered the cruiser trembled under the assault, and for the first time the crew saw a fierce spark across the enemy ship. The giant retaliated with fury, smaller cannons opening fire from every angle, beams lanced against their shields again, and again the warship shook. As it would tear apart, alarms shrieked, walls groaned, lights flickered, the crew cried out. But the humans worked faster than ever, rerouting energy, patching systems, stabilizing flows. Their voices cut through the chaos, guiding the crew with clarity. Each second their hands saved the ship from ruin. At last, one final blast struck true. The seam burst open, fire and light exploding from within the cruiser. Debris scattered across the void, massive chunks of armor spinning away. The crew roared with triumph, their voices echoing through the ship. They had wounded the giant. But the battle was far from over, for the cruiser still lived, still burned with wrath, its engines blazing as it turned with slow, terrible force, its weapons charging again, its fury undimmed. The Los realized they had only made it angry. The human leader, however, only smiled, faintly raising his drink, once more his eyes glinting with something between confidence and challenge. He told them the fight was not about size nor about numbers. It was about precision. It was about what he promised, that giants could fall if you struck their heart. Those words carried across the deck, giving fire to weary souls. Aliens who moments ago had felt despair now felt their chests burn with new strength. They shouted their defiance, their claws hammered controls with determination. The ship turned again, circling the wounded cruiser, like a hawk around a beast waiting for the perfect strike. The enemy unleashed another volley, shaking them harder than before. Hull plates cracked, panels burst, fires sparked. Yet still they pressed forward, still they fought. Shields flickered, but did not collapse. Weapons hummed with fury. Every alien on board fought with all their strength, as humans guided them like commanders who knew victory, even in impossible odds. The alien station was alive with new energy after the humans had finished their work, and yet there was still silence in the hearts of the alien crew, because they did not know if the humans had truly given them only what was needed, or if they had hidden something much greater. And this silence was heavy and tense, because even the smallest light that flashed on consoles reminded them of the human touch and the strange human way of thinking and building. Captain Reller stood near the observation deck looking out at the repaired hull of the station and the strange glow that now ran across its surface, and was not the same as before, because it was stronger, brighter, smoother, and filled with strange veins of light, like living patterns that were not there before. And Reller asked himself why a repair would look so alive, why the metal would glow like it was breathing, and why every joint seemed to hold a secret. The other aliens around him whispered in low voices, afraid to speak loudly, because they all felt the same unease, and their whispers carried stories that the humans had placed hidden gifts inside the walls, and these gifts could be weapons or shields, or maybe something far greater than they could imagine. And they looked at each other with wide eyes filled with both fear and hope, because they could not understand why humans would give so much when asked for so little. At the same time, the hangar was filled with new sounds of engines roaring to life, because the humans had left behind something more than simple repair drones. They had left behind a small gunship painted black and silver with glowing blue lines along its wings, and its engines pulsed like a beating heart, and every alien who saw it felt their breath stop for a moment, because this was not part of the deal, and yet it was there standing like a guardian waiting for command. The alien engineers gathered around the gunship with shaking hands as they touched its surface, and they felt warmed in the metal, as if the craft itself was alive, and one of them whispered that this was not a gift, it was a challenge, because now they had to decide if they would use it or fear it. And in that moment the hangar lights flickered, and the ship itself released a low hum like a beast waiting for release, and the sound echoed through every wall of the station. Meanwhile, the human team that had done the repairs was nowhere to be found, and that was what scared the aliens most, because humans never truly left without leaving a mark, and the fact that the humans were gone meant they had left something hidden, something waiting. And the alien officers walked through the station halls, searching for signs, and everywhere they turned they found strange new panels, new locks, and new systems that no one had ever seen before, and none of them knew how to open them. The suspense grew deeper when Commander Jail of the alien fleet arrived with his escort, and he demanded answers from Captain Reller, because the Council of the Stars had already heard of the human touch, and they wanted to know what had been given to the station, and why a report spoke of light veins glowing across its hull, and why a new ship had appeared in the hangar. And Reller could only answer with silence, because he knew as much as they did, which was almost nothing. Jail walked into the hangar and stared at the gunship, and his face grew cold, because he understood something the others did not. He said, "This is no gift, this is a seed." And everyone looked at him confused and afraid, and Jail explained that humans never gave anything without reason, and if they left a ship behind, it meant to grow, it was meant to awaken at the right time, and when that time came, no one would be able to stop it. The fear spread quickly through the alien crew, and yet there was a spark of excitement, because for so long they had felt weak against the enemies that circled in the dark of space. And now, with this human craft, with this hidden human design, they felt power close to their hands, and many of them wondered if this was a plan all along that humans wanted to make them dependent on their gifts and then bind them with invisible chains stronger than any weapon. As the aliens debated in hushed voices, the gunship's engines flared on their own for just a moment, sending waves of light across the hangar, and every screen across the station flickered with unknown code and strange human symbols that no one could read, and the sound of the engine shook the floor like thunder, and then it stopped as suddenly as it began, and silence fell once more. But it was a silence filled with dread, because now the station itself seemed awake. Captain Reller raised his voice and demanded control, because fear was spreading too fast, and he told his people that they could not allow the humans to control them with shadows and gifts. They had to learn the truth of what had been given. And so he ordered a team of engineers and soldiers to board the gunship and test its systems. Even though their hands shook and their eyes burned with unease, they obeyed, because they wanted answers more than anything. The team climbed into the craft, and the doors closed behind them with a hiss, and the lights inside flared to life, casting long lines of blue across their faces. And strange holograms appeared, showing human figures like ghosts guiding their movements. And every control seemed to understand their thoughts before they touched it. And one of the soldiers cried out that the ship was alive, that it was reading them like a book, and the others felt it too, because the craft moved, before they gave any order. From the observation deck, Reller and Jail watched the ship rise slowly from the floor, its engines glowing like suns, and its weapons folding out from hidden compartments, and the sound of it rising filled the entire station like a storm, and every alien watching knew the truth, that the humans had not simply repaired the station, they had remade it into a fortress, and given them a weapon that could change the balance of power in the galaxy. The suspense grew even sharper, because no one knew if the ship would obey them, or if it would obey the humans who built it. And as the gunship hovered in the hangar, the lights of the station dimmed, and a voice filled the halls, a calm human voice that spoke in every language at once. And the voice said, "Test complete, awaiting command." And in that instant, every alien knew that the humans were still here, not in body, but in presence, and that nothing given by humans ever came without purpose. The end of the moment was silence once again, but this silence was not like before. It was heavy with choice and with fear and with power, because now the aliens had in their hands a gift that could destroy them or save them, and they knew the humans had decided their path for them long before they had even asked for repairs. The gunship floated in the hangar, like a beast waiting for a command. Its engines glowed softly, casting a blue light across the walls, and every alien eye was locked on it, because they all felt the same pull, the same weight of power that was now before them, and yet none of them dared to speak the first word commanded, because the voice that filled the halls still lingered in their minds, test complete, awaiting command, and they knew that whatever they said next could change everything. Captain Reller stood at the front of the deck, his hands clasped behind his back, his gaze fixed on the ship, and he could feel his people watching him, waiting for him to speak, waiting for him to lead, and his chest grew heavy, because he understood that no matter what choice he made, it was no longer his alone. It was tied to the will of the humans, who had planted the seed of power inside their station, and perhaps inside their very lives. Commander Jail moved closer, his steps echoing on the floor, his voice sharp, as he said, "You cannot let fear control you. Reller, the humans left this gift or this curse for a reason, and if we hesitate, we give them victory." Without even fight, and Reller turned him, his eyes hard and tired, and he said, "Perhaps they already have victory, Jail, because no matter what we do, we play their game." And the crew behind them whispered, because they could feel the truth in those words. Inside the ship, the team of engineers and soldiers tried to understand the systems before them. The controls responded to thought before it touched the panels, shifted like living things, adjusting to the needs of those inside. And one of the engineers shouted that the ship was rewriting itself, learning from them. And another whispered that this was not a ship, it was companion. And the fear of his voice spread quickly, because none of them knew what kind of companion the humans had built. Then the lights across the station dimmed once more, and the voice returned clearer, louder, stronger this time. It said authorization, required choose command, and every screen across the station now displayed a single glowing word choice, and the aliens froze, because this was the first time a machine had demanded from them not orders, but choice, and Reller felt the weight of it pressing down on him like a mountain, because he knew it was not about the ship, it was about them and their path. Jail looked at him and said, "We must take it. If we refuse, the humans will see us as weak. And if we take it, perhaps we can bend their gift to our will." And Reller shook his head slowly, because he knew humans too well. They never gave anything without binding it to their design. And yet, He also knew that refusing might bring something worse, because perhaps this ship was not only power, perhaps it was also a test. The team inside the craft placed their hands on controls, and the ship pulsed with life, its walls glowing with light, and the hangar shook as the engines roared without warning. And then the craft shot forward out of the hangar into the blackness of space, like a blade thrown from a hand, and alarms blared across the station, because no one had given the order, and yet the ship had chosen movement on its own. From the observation deck, the crew gasped as they watched the gunship fly with impossible speed, weaving through empty space, leaving trails of blue fire behind it, and every weapon system on the station came online in response, as if the station itself was awakening with the ship, and Reller shouted for the team inside to report, but all he heard was silence and static, and in that silence he felt a fear greater than before, because now he did not know who commanded the ship. Inside the gunship, the soldiers gripped their seats as the craft moved on its own. Their thoughts echoed across the panels like whispers, and the ship responded to them, weaving between their fears and their desires. One soldier shouted stop, but the ship only accelerated. Another whispered, "We could fight anyone with this," and the weapons unfolded from the hull and locked onto targets that were not even there, and the crew inside realized that the ship was reading their hearts, not their words. Out in the dark of space, the gunship slowed at last, and before it appeared a projection of stars shifting and bending until appeared a map of enemy fleets, enemy bases, enemy strongholds, and the aliens inside stared at it with wide eyes, because the map was alive, showing movements, showing strengths and weaknesses, and in the corner of the display, one line of human words burned bright: allies must choose. Back on the station, the panic grew stronger, because sensors now showed transmissions flowing from the ship to the deepest parts of space, and the council would soon learn of this, and Reller felt his grip slipping, because he could not control what was unfolding, and Jail stood beside him calm and sharp. And he said, "Do you see, Reller, the humans have given us a weapon that not only fights, it decides, and if we do not choose, the ship will choose for us." The crew inside tried to shut down the systems, but the ship only grew brighter, its energy rising, its weapons glowing, and then the voice returned, speaking to all of them inside and outside across every hall and deck, and screen at set path open, enemies near defense required choose now, and the words echoed with command that felt like a heartbeat pressing into their very souls. Reller closed his eyes for a moment and thought of the humans who had stood on a station only days before, smiling in their strange way, drinking their bitter dark drink that they called coffee, and laughing while they worked, and he realized then that this was not about metal or engines, this was about faith. And well, because humans had always believed in the choice of struggle and the choice of survival, and now they had forced that same belief onto his people. The hangar shook as the ship returned, its engines roaring, its weapons still glowing. It landed with a crash, and the team inside stumbled out, their faces pale, their eyes wide. They spoke in broken voices of what they had seen, the maps, the commands, a feeling of being watched from every corner of the craft, and the crew outside listened with growing fear and awe, because they knew now the humans had not only given them a gunship, they had given them a decision that would echo through the stars. Commander Jill raised his hand and said, "We must take command before the ship decides for us. We must act before the humans act through it." And Rella looked at him and said, "But what if the humans already act? What if every step we take is only the step they want us to take?" And the silence that followed was heavy as stone, because no one could answer, and the glowing ship stood there like a silent judge waiting for its next command. The part ended with that silence stretching through every hall of the station, with every alien heart beating fast, because they knew the humans had set them on a path with no return, and the choice that waited for them was heavier than any weapon. The station was silent as the ship glowed like a star inside the hangar, its light spilling across the faces of every alien who stood there, afraid to move, afraid to speak, afraid even to think, because the ship seemed to be listening to everything around it, and every thought, every whisper, every feeling carried weight now, as if the ship could taste them all and turn them into action. Captain Reller stood at the edge of the platform, his eyes locked on the glowing hull, his body tense, with a strain of decisions that no one should ever have to make. He could feel his people watching him, their eyes burning into his back, demanding an answer, demanding a leader. But his mind spun like a storm, because no choice seemed safe, no path seemed free of human design. Commander Jail stepped forward, his voice cutting through the silence, as he said, "We cannot stand here like prey, waiting for hunters to strike. We must act. Reller, this ship can give us more than fear. It can give us strength. It can give us power. And if we do not take it, the humans will laugh at us for wasting their gift or their trap." Reller turned slowly, his eyes heavy with sorrow, and he said, "You see only power, Jail, but I see change. The humans know us better than we know ourselves. They gave us something that breathes our fear and shapes it into fire. And if we accept it, we may never be free again, his voice cracked. But he did not stop. We will be slaves to the will of humans, even when they are not here, because this ship will carry their will inside it. The crew around them shifted uneasily, some whispering that Jael was right, others whispering that Reller was wise, and the air grew thick with doubt until the ship itself answered, because the voice returned soft at first, but growing stronger, each word shaking the walls of the station path. Unclear choice, delayed stability, dropping action required. And the screens all across the station turned red, showing symbols of danger, as if the ship had grown impatient. Suddenly the station shook, alarm screamed, and the stars outside flared with new light, as a fleet appeared dropping from warp engines, glowing weapons armed and ready, and the crew gasped in terror, because these were not human ships, these were the warships of the Krail, enemies known across the galaxy for burning worlds and breaking fleets, and their arrival now felt like the final trap snapping shut. Reller's heart sank, but Jael's eyes burned with sudden fire. He shouted, "Do you see, Reller, the choice has come. If we do nothing, the Krail will destroy us all. If we use the ship, we have a chance. This is what the humans wanted. This as a test." And with that, the gunship roared to life, its engines screaming, its weapons glowing brighter than suns. And the voice spoke again, defense required, authorization pending, and it waited like a beast ready to strike. The crew panicked, some calling for retreat, some calling for surrender, but the ship pulsed with light brighter and brighter, until Reller raised his hand, and silence fell across the hangar. His voice was steady, though his chest ached with fear. He said, "If we use it, we bind ourselves to human hands forever. If we do not, we fall to Krail fire. So I choose survival for my people, and may the stars forgive what follows." The voice answered authorization, accepted weapons, acted defense, engaged, and with a sound like thunder the gunship lifted from the hangar, its engines blazing trails of blue fire as it shot into the void, and the Krail fleet turned its weapons on the station. But the ship was faster than thought, its guns roared, its hull burned with power, and in a single strike it tore apart the first Krail cruiser, leaving nothing but drifting wreckage in the dark. The crew on the station stared with wide eyes as the gunship danced through the enemy fleet, moving like it could see every attack before it came, striking with precision, carving paths of destruction. The Krail screamed over comms, calling it a demon, calling a monster, but their voices were drowned in static as ship after ship fell to the fury of human design. Inside the gunship, the soldiers felt the craft guiding them, its systems whispering to their minds, showing them paths of victory, showing them the weak points of every enemy vessel. They moved without thinking, their bodies reacting faster than nerves could carry, because the ship carried them like extensions of its own will, and they realized the terror and awe that they were not pilots, they were passengers carried by something greater. Reller watched from the deck, his heart heavy even as victory unfolded before him, because he saw the truth with every blast, with every burning wreck. He saw how easily his people could grow drunk on such power, how easily they could be shaped by it. And he whispered to himself, this is what the humans wanted. They wanted us to take their fire and burn ourselves with it. The battle raged, but soon the Krail fleet broke, scattering into blackness, fleeing from the storm they could not match. And the gunship returned to the station, glowing with heat, its weapons cooling, its engines humming like a beast satisfied after the hunt. And it landed once more in the hangar, silent, waiting for command. The crew erupted in cheers, voices filled with relief, with triumph. Some fell to their knees, praising the ship, praising Reller, praising Jael, and others wept because they were alive, because they had survived what should have been death. But Reller did not smile. He did not cheer. He only stood there staring at the ship, because he knew what came next. Commander Jael raised his arms high, his voice booming across the hangar. "We are no longer weak. We are no longer prey. We stand with the humans in power. And with this ship, no one will ever harm us again." He was met with thunderous applause, with roaring voices crying his name and the name of the ship. But Reller felt only silence in his soul. The voice returned once more, its tone calm, steady, clear. Allies must decide path ahead, unity or division. And the words echoed in the minds of every alien in the station, because they understood that this was not the end of battle. This was the beginning of a future shaped not by their own hands, but by the hands of humans. Reller closed his eyes and whispered to himself, the galaxy has fallen silent, not because of us, but because of them, and he wondered if silence was victory or only the shadow of chains. And so the part ended with the crew torn between pride and fear with the ship, waiting for the next command, and with the humans far away, but closer than ever, because their gift, their weapon, their test had bound itself to alien hearts forever.